question.
That's good.
Relatable.
All right, Mike live. Mike live.
Is it live streamed on Network Nova?
I want to thank you all for coming this evening. My name is Holly Hazard, and I have been helping to organize this forum on behalf of Mesa District Dems and Network Nova. Before we get started, I just wanted to take 1 moment to just have us all think about Congressman Connolly's staff and what happened yesterday. I don't think any of us want to be in a place where we think what happened is just the normal course of business, and so I just wanted to recognize that that did happen, and that we all, I think, are in agreement that we really got to start to do something about violence. I've got a couple of announcements before we start the forum. As you, I think, my guess is you're all pretty active voters, but I do want to remind you that the school board endorsement process is underway. It will end on May 20th. If you are either registered with the FCDC party or you signed up for the event, you should have gotten an email instructing you how and where and when to vote. If you have any more questions about that, I'm going to ask you to see Rachel who's over there, and she hopefully can answer those questions. But I did also want to say, that FCDC needs volunteers for the 20th, and so if anybody can spend a bit of time helping Democracy in Action, please also see Rachel Griffin.
Those are one of the sites where you can go and vote in person. They need help.
The second thing is that also primary voting for this race has begun. And there's information on voting at the table by the door. Remember, please, that we now have same-day registration in the Commonwealth, so you can grab a friend who's never voted before and walk them through the process and take them to vote with you, and double or triple the number of people who come to vote. So please consider not only voting, but also taking a friend. I want to first thank the campaign staff for both campaigns who helped us get the room set up. I want to thank Ty Begley and Steer Calhoun. Ty is videotaping the event for folks who can't be here so that they can catch it afterwards. And Steer is, I believe, live streaming this on the Network Nova channel. I want to thank PM Edward, the PM, I call them the PMs, for timekeepers, our timekeepers, PM McCoach and PM Edwards. And also Diane Rossi and Tina Winkler, who's not here tonight, for logistics and for a lot of program assistance to get this up and started. And I'm pleased now to introduce our esteemed moderator, Gene Rossi, who I think many of you know. I will say I've got a bit of an anecdote about him. I had seen him around, and yeah, don't worry, don't panic. It's not I had seen him around in Democratic circles for years and years and years, and finally, a couple of years ago, we met at some event, I think it was some dinner, and we decided we wanted to meet and just have coffee and get to know each other. And that was, and I happen to remember the date. It was May 30th, 2020. I don't know if any of you else remember what happened on May 30th, 2020, but that was about 5 days after all the COVID sanctions set in, and so it then took us 2 years to get that cup of coffee. But I've enjoyed getting to know Gene in the last couple of years, and for those of you who don't know him, for nearly 30 years, Gene was a federal prosecutor in Virginia's Eastern District and with the U.S. Department of Justice. He is perhaps best known for his historic work on the national opioid crisis and his record number of trials with the Justice Department. When he left the Justice Department to run for Lieutenant Governor of Virginia, he was awarded the FBI Washington Fields Office Career Achievement Award, the only prosecutor to have ever received this award. He holds law degrees from both American University and Georgetown University. Before his law career, he worked as a Washington representative for Connecticut Governor Bill O'Neill. He's currently a criminal defense attorney with Carleton Fields in Washington, D.C., and he teaches constitutional law at George Mason University and trial advocacy at Harvard Law School. And with that, Regine.
You know, I wasn't going to say anything about John Durham, but I can't resist. Let me just say this. It says I was awarded the FBI Field Office's Career Achievement Award, the only prosecutor to ever receive it. I was the first one to ever receive it. I think maybe one or two others have. But I want to tell you this right now. The Federal Bureau of Investigations has more integrity in their pinky than John Durham has, and Barr has, and Trump has their entire lives. And that's all I'm going to say about it. I am the moderator, so I want to go through some ground rules. And one of them is you can clap. That's all you're allowed to do. We're going to start this off with the clap from you folks before they do their openings. And then at the end of their closings, you can clap. This is not a CNN town hall with Caitlin Collins and Trump. All right? Please, you're all informed voters. You don't need to boo. You don't need to make a comment. We're all mature here. Okay? So please, if your candidate says something you like, or the other candidate says something that you don't like, mum's the word, okay? I want to acknowledge some bigwigs here. And one of the bigwigs is Senator Dick Sassel. And we're Dick, I said this at an event for Foster. She's now a judge, and she was running for delegate. And we had a bunch of people talking, and I remember this, I think it was 19 at the, I forget what headquarters. And the Affordable Care Act, when Republicans tried to throw that curveball procedural, you know what I'm talking about? You saw that they were putting grease on the ball, and you saw it and you hit a home run. And you kept them from pulling a fast one on us. So the Affordable Care Act is passed in Virginia because of you. And that's just good time to fight. You've probably realized that Dick Sassel has a good sense of humor. All right? A little salty at times. I worked in a Rossi lumberyard. We used some certain words. Dick likes those words too. But this was my favorite. The great Diane Rossi found this. On February 23rd of this year, he was asked why he's leaving the Assembly, the Senate. And this is a quote from Dick Sassel. Quote, "Fish gotta swim, birds gotta fly, and Saslaw's got to move on." That was brilliant. So we honor Dick Saslaw.
Let me give credit to Oscar Hammerstein and Jerome Kern. It was from Showboat.
And now we got some electeds from the Mason Board of Supervisors, Andre Jimenez, and Reed Voss. Are they here? Could they stand up? Thank you so much. And last but not least, a dear, dear friend of the Rossis, Lisa Sales. She's president of Virginia Now. Where's Lisa? Let's go through some quick ground rules, and we're going to turn the first question over to Colleen Crana. We're going to have a 90-minute debate, maybe a little less. We're going to have 4 parts of this debate. We're going to have openings. We're going to have block questions. And the openings are 3 minutes. The block questions, you're allowed 1 to 2 minutes. Then we're going to have, if we have time, rapid fire. And then those will be 10 seconds. And then closings will be 3 minutes each. Senator Marsden is starting off first in both. And Heidi Drauschak, and I'm going to
No, that was right.
yeah, but I just wanted to spell it. D-R-A-U-S-C-H-A-K, Drauschak, okay? They have a fancy card. Where is it? All right, in the block question segment, if I am asked a question and then Colleen answers it, and I think Colleen is off the reservation, I can use a challenge card. And they get 3 of them each, and it's 30 seconds. You get 3 challenge cards, you don't have to use them. And Dave Bratt, that slime ball, former, current, he used a challenge card in a debate with Abigail after Abigail gave her closing argument. And the moderator let him do that, caused a big stir. So these cards are only for block questions. They're not for openings, closings, or rapid fires. Now, we have a timekeeper. And the timekeepers are going to give the candidates a 10-second card,
30.
a 30, and no 10.
30.
10, and then a bell. Fine. Okay. Gene Rossi grew up in East Hampton, Connecticut, near Middletown. And believe it or not, East Hampton, Connecticut, that tiny little town of 7,000, is the world's largest producer of bells. I'm not kidding. Our mascot in high school was the bell ringer. Diane laughs at that. She's from Mississippi, where they had the bulldogs. Okay? So they don't make those big bells like Ben. They make the little bells. But I have a special bell for you. Have you all seen the movie It's a Wonderful Life? This was one of the bells used on a tree when Clarence got his wings. So was that an appropriate bell to use for this great debate? I think so. So I give this to you, and let's start. Okay? And the first question. So I pass you to Mike. I'll just stand here. I'll go sit. You get 3, and then she gets 3. I'm sorry.
Thank you so much, Gene, and welcome to everyone. Thank you so much for having us, and my thoughts too are with Team Connolly and the horror they've just been through. It is all too often that occurrence here in America. I wanted to start, there's a number of issues that are important, but I wanted to start with 3 that are really the basis of why I'm running and why I continue to want to serve. And the first is I wanted to protect reproductive rights. We all know what this governor is capable of doing. We all know what his plan is to eliminate abortion here in Virginia. And I'm running to protect that. But it's more, excuse me, it's just more than how you vote on an issue like that. It's what you do. And when the Dobbs decision came down, I've sponsored 3 different trips down to Virginia Beach. One for my campaign manager to go down and help out, and then sponsored a lunch for another group, and then took 5 people down, put them up overnight, paid for meals and what have you. So we had 2 days of canvassing in what turned out to be a very, very close race. But it gave us another pro-choice voice in the Senate with Aaron Rouse. The second thing I want to talk about is campaign finance reform. It's time. I sponsored 2 bills this year on campaign finance reform. The first as a chief co-patron with Jennifer Boysko, Senator Jennifer Boysko, and that was to take away the ability of anyone to spend campaign funds on personal expenses. Sounds simple, but the rule setting is what's going to be the complicated part of that once the bill is passed. The bill should be easy, the rule setting difficult. Same thing with a cap on campaign finances in terms of the contributions. And I was a co-patron of Senator Peterson's $20,000 cap on any campaign contributions. I think that's a good start. I think we can probably go farther than that. The next thing is I wanted to talk about was the the whole issue of the environment. Our environment is so important to us. I'm so pleased to have been the climate champion for the League of Conservation Voters, to have 100% A+ ratings from the Sierra Club and the Climate Cabinet. And we have got to make the Virginia Clean Economy Act work. That is I was the chief co-sponsor of that bill with Jennifer McClellan, who's now in Congress. And what that does is get us to a carbon neutral situation in Virginia in 2045. I need to get that done. We need to get that done. We're working with all the companies who are involved in solar installation, with Dominion, with the environmental groups, and I've always stood with the environmental groups when it comes time to making energy decisions. The last thing is, I introduced a bill this year to make it unlawful to leave a gun in an unlocked car, and Republicans killed it. We got it through the Senate, and Republicans killed it. 714 guns stolen in Richmond just last year, and that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out on a Tuesday evening. Thank you to the Mason Dems and to Network Nova for hosting, and thank you, Senator Marsden, for participating in this debate. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Heidi Drauschak, and I am running in the new SD 35, where I live with my family in Springfield. Just a little bit about my background. I started my career in government a decade ago working for the Obama White House. I came to Virginia to attend the University of Richmond, where I got my law degree and my MBA. And I started working in state politics about 7 years ago. I began and then ran a nonprofit that advocated for education, environmental, and healthcare issues. I am now a small business owner with my husband, and in my free time, I advocate for campaign finance reform here in the Commonwealth. And I spend my free time doing that because time and time again in my work, I have seen how corporate interests have been prioritized over those of hardworking families here in Virginia. And to that end, here in Virginia, we still do not have any guaranteed paid sick days. We do not have paid family medical leave. We still have a $12 minimum per hour minimum wage. And we have not codified the rights of Roe v. Wade in our Constitution. I would love to say we can blame that all on Republicans, but I have worked in state politics long enough to be here when we had the trifecta, and we left a lot of those issues still on the table. And so don't get me wrong, I still think it's extremely important to push back against the Republican agenda and all the horrible things that Governor Youngkin is pushing down. But I think it's equally important that when we hopefully retake the control of the General Assembly, hopefully this election, and the governorship in 2 years, that we have a legislature that is ready to make bold action on these issues. And that's because this is personal to me. My husband was raised in Fairfax County, went to Fairfax County schools. We have decided to raise our son in this community. He will go to these public schools, play in these rivers, get his first job in this district. And for your children, for your grandchildren, I think we owe it to all of them to have a legislature that is ready to make bold moves and create a future that they can be proud to grow up in. So I look forward to your questions, and I look forward to earning your vote on June 20th. And I thank you all again for being here.
All right, I want to introduce Colleen Crana. She is a junior at the Field School, and her family lives near Lake Barcroft. So you get the first question.
Ms. Drauschak, we will begin with you. You have 2 minutes for this particular question. As a high school student, this issue is very important to me personally. Sunday marked the 1-year anniversary of the shooting in Buffalo, New York at a top supermarket. Mass shootings have become commonplace since the Columbine shooting in 1999. To date, there have been more mass shootings than calendar days in 2023. As a Senate candidate, What more do you feel can be done, other than thoughts and prayers, to reduce the frequency and severity of these horrifying attacks?
Thank you for the question, and I'm sorry that you and many others have to deal with this. When we go out on the doors and when we talk to voters in the district, this is an issue we hear about over and over again. There are students who are worried about going to school. There are parents who are worried about sending their kids to school. There are families that are worried about being safe in their own communities. I have never wavered on my position here and have held the same progressive views. I think we need to do more as a Commonwealth as far as gun control and gun safety measures. I think we need to ban assault rifles and high-capacity magazines. I think we need safe storage laws that guarantee that those who shouldn't have access to firearms, like domestic abusers, don't get access to them. I think we need to enforce our red flag laws. Oh, I apologize. Enforce our red flag laws so that dangerous individuals like domestic abusers don't have access to them, as well as safe storage laws so that minors don't have access to guns. We also need to ban 3D printed guns and ghost guns, and we need to make sure that we take guns out of public spaces, because no one should go to a restaurant or a bar or a place of worship or a school and have to worry about these extremely dangerous weapons. So I think there's a lot more we can do. Of course, we are in a tough situation with a Republican governor, and some people will say that this is an uphill battle, but I think it is something that is absolutely vital to our community, and so as legislators, it needs to be a priority, and it needs to be something that we try to make progress on, because I think we owe it, like I said, to our students and to the families of the Commonwealth.
Thank you. I first got involved in gun safety laws back when Tim Kaine was governor. I introduced one of the first background check bills. Do you know that we have 70 jurisdictions in the Commonwealth of Virginia who have determined that they're not going to enforce the gun laws that we've passed? Prosecutors, county boards of supervisors, that's got to change. I've introduced bills regarding magazine sizes. I've introduced bills like this year with guns stolen from cars. This is what's arming the young people in Virginia and why we're seeing a spike in violence. They're using it not only to sell these weapons, but to arm themselves in their community. Lynchburg, 1,345 guns stolen from cars in the last 3 years, and that's just the ones that are reported. We are in a serious situation here. It is changing the way we live. It is changing the way we think. I have 3 daughters-in-law and 6 grandchildren, and they've told me about how it is when their children leave the home in the morning and the fear and the worry that they have that something bad could happen. This is something we can't wait for the trifecta of democratic control. We have to keep banging at the door. And I'll tell you one little bit of progress this year. When I introduced the guns stolen from cars bill in front of the House subcommittee, usually when you introduce a gun bill, they stare at you and in a defiant and resistant way. But this time, they all had their heads down. None of them would look at me. They know. They know, and we have to keep banging on this door, regardless of who's governor, regardless of who's in charge of the House, regardless of who's in charge of the Senate. But this election is critical this year. We have to take control back.
All right, this question is 1 minute, and Senator Marsden goes first. It's a simple one. Do you support mandatory paid leave for Virginia employees, and how many days?
And this is for Virginia state employees?
Yeah, Virginia employees, yes.
Virginia employees, yes. Well, I think they certainly do get sick and annual leave at this point in time, but I think everybody ought to get at least 5 days of sick leave, 5 days of annual leave. I think a lot of companies have switched now to not differentiating between sick and vacation leave. They're just leaving it to the employee's discretion. It is critical that everybody deserves that. I know it's been such a terrible issue for home health care providers. The SEIU folks, the union, that those folks, if they get sick, they just lose a day's pay. That's not right. Everybody deserves time for themselves, and I would prefer to have it so that it could be used either for personal leave or for sick leave or for family leave, whatever the case may be.
No, that was my,
I may just
that was
sit.
my fault. That was my fault.
So, and I just want to clarify, is it sick leave?
Oh, it's a paid leave for Virginia employees. How many days?
Okay.
Yeah.
So I similarly support sick days. I also want to speak to paid family medical leave. I am a supporter of 3 months of paid family leave. This is especially personal to me. I had a son 3 weeks ago, and I have heard story after story of women who were forced to go back to work a week, 2 weeks, even a month after having a baby. And I'm fortunate, I have a husband who supports me and a family who is supporting me, but I cannot imagine having to go back to work after 5 days. And so I believe that every mother and every father for that matter should be able to take the time to spend with their newborn, with a loved one, with a sick relative, and so I'm in favor of 3 months of paid family leave.
All right. Heidi Drauschak, you go first. You have 1 minute. Here's the question. How will you use technology to improve your efficacy with your constituents?
1 minute.
Okay, I love this question. So there are so many technologies that we are not using in government right now that we can use to create two-way conversations. There are tools like OpenGov, Public Citizen. I've worked with many of these companies over the last couple of years in my work that ensure not only that legislators are able to broadcast what they are doing back to their constituencies, which right now is very, very difficult to find out, and it also allows the voters and the residents of a district to speak to their legislators, because that is also something that can be very frustrating when you are an advocate or you are a citizen and you are trying to get through to your legislator in the short General Assembly session or even in the rest of the year. So I believe there are enormous amounts of technology that are out there. Like I said, specifically OpenGov, Public Citizen, there's some really cool technologies that already exist, and I am extremely excited to implement them when in office.
Thank you. Actually, one of the things that I'm a big proponent of is an older technology called the telephone. I don't get into as many email exchanges as you would think, or texting exchanges with people. I call my constituents when they have an issue. I call them and we have long conversations, and it's been incredible out knocking the thousands of doors I've knocked since last April, is that to run into people and say, oh, Senator Marsden, thank you. You helped me with this 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Thank you so much for being here, for doing that. To create that communication, I put my cell phone on every publication that I have, every printed document that I turn out. But you're right, there are ever-changing numbers of platforms that we can use. It's not just Twitter and Facebook anymore. It's Instagram. It's any one of these devices that allow us for two-way communication and to get our message out that this is who we are, this is what we can do for you, and this is what we believe.
All right, the fourth question is labor. Please share your thoughts on the repeal of Virginia's right-to-work law that hinders unions from expanding and negotiating new collective bargaining agreements and keeps wages in Virginia lower on average. Michigan, not the University of Michigan, but Michigan, just repealed its right-to-work law. Should Virginia do the same? Why or why not? Senator Marsden goes first. You have 2 minutes. 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. We have made tremendous progress with labor. I think we were one of the last in the country, and now as a place to work, we're somewhere right in the middle. And we've also managed to keep our best place to do business ranking. Right to work is something I believe that we need to repeal, but we need to do it intelligently. We need to do it in the right way. I've been working with Governor Northam, and I've been working with this administration I chair the subcommittee in finance on economic development and natural resources. And it was my efforts with Governor Northam that got $100 million put into what are called business-ready sites in Southwest Virginia, Southside Virginia, and over in Eastern Virginia to make sure that we can attract manufacturing business back to Virginia. Southside and Southwest lost everything. They lost textiles, they lost furniture, they lost the railroads that went with all of that. And with the decline of the coal and tobacco industries, they've been left with nothing. We have got to get those back to them. I don't know that it's time to repeal right to work while we're doing this because we want to attract these major businesses to come here, but it is work we can do that we've already been successful with to make sure that project labor agreements can be used in Virginia. We've also made it so that local governments can get into collective bargaining. We are on the road to repealing right to work. We need to restore economic equity in the Commonwealth and get our cousins in Southside and Southwest Virginia back up and running in manufacturing again.
So I unequivocally support repealing right to work, and I support doing it immediately. In the United States, about 6% of our workforce is unionized, and when you look at the graphs of when right to work came into existence, the level of membership in unions goes down from about 30% to where we are today, and income inequality tracks almost exactly in the opposite direction. The more we have gutted our unions and we have stopped caring about our workers and prioritizing the top of the chain instead of all of the workers who build it, we have created, like I said, an enormous amount of income inequality, and we are not taking care of the people who do the work. I think it's unfortunate that we always feel like it has to be this decision between businesses and workers. In my work working with businesses, we have found that not to be the case. You can take care of your workers and have a much more profitable, a much more successful business. And so I think we need to stop acting like we can be the best state to do business in or the best state to work in. There is no reason why Virginia can't be the best state to do business in and the best state to work in. And that starts with repealing the right to work laws. They are actually headquartered in our district, unfortunately, and also doing more, like I said, raising the minimum wage, so many other efforts that we can do to make sure that the people working in these businesses are taken care of. And so that is not only something I would support, but something that is absolutely a priority for me.
No clapping. Chris Falcon, well, the clerk of the court is very dear to my heart. I don't care what jurisdiction. If you're a lawyer, you got to know the clerk of court. Chris Falcon just walked in. Where is he? And I failed to mention something very important. You're probably thinking, where do these questions come from? Well, they come from several sources, at least. One, Network Nova. Where's Sarah Calhoun? Okay? By the way, I'm going to leave that question. But Network Nova. Second, our forum audience. We have the 3x5 cards. Third, the public who submitted questions over social media via Google. The baby can cry. But we're very friendly. And then Colleen Cranop from the Mason Young Dems, she got questions from the social media. So we try to put a method to our madness. Okay, this next question is, Ms. Drauschak goes first. It is 1 minute. And how will you work to ensure that corporate interests are not prioritized over those of your constituents?
So to put it simply, I will not be taking any corporate money in the campaign. I'm the only candidate in this race not taking any corporate contributions. I think it starts on the campaign trail. If we take money from corporations, it is absolutely understood that when you get into office, that is a relationship that has already begun. I think it's important that we prioritize the citizens of our district during the campaign, and that flows through to being a legislator. So I, again, am not taking any corporate contributions. I do recognize that corporations need to be part of the conversation, but they need to be part of the conversation in the same way that you or I would be part of the conversation if we showed up to Richmond during the General Assembly. And so that is my stance and how I plan to prioritize the residents and the voters and the people of my district over corporate interests.
I've never let corporate contributions influence the way I make decisions down in the General Assembly. Generally speaking, you always have people on both sides of an issue. Some of them contributed to you last year, some may have contributed to you this year. I don't let that interfere with the decisions that I make. This is the system that we have in Virginia, and it's been one that has worked for us, and I have not allowed corporate interests to take hold of anything that I do in my job as your state senator. And we can look at campaign finance reform, and there's no question it has to be looked at. But in terms of that, there is just in no way has that ever been an issue for me or for my colleagues in the state Senate.
Okay, this is a question from the Goochland Dems Committee. Tina Winkler, she's the chair of the Democratic Chairs in Virginia, and her committee issued a question on the Dillon Rule. And we could go from 8:30 to 9:30 and have Senator Sasslaw give us a lecture on the Dillon Rule. So here's the question. It is 1 minute. Senator Marsden goes first. What will you do in a coming session to remove the Dillon Rule? I know this takes a constitutional minute. You have 1 minute.
We're going to have 15, 16, perhaps 17 new senators this year. It's a whole new ballgame down in Richmond. And we need to pull together as a group. I don't want to run off and try to look like I'm a hero for doing one thing or another. We need to move together as a team. This is a team sport, and our caucus is a team. Dick Sasslaw has built this caucus over the past 25 years, and it's been an effective one. And the issue of making a decision on the Dillon Rule is one that we move together as a group on, and we'll come to that decision. There are some benefits to the Dillon Rule in terms of being able to have consistency across the state in terms of our laws, but at the same time it interferes with local governments and their ability to meet the unique needs of their constituents. It's a discussion we need to have with this brand new Senate, and that is what we're going to have. And I'm running again because I want to be a bridge between the new Senate and the old Senate, and to take us forward.
They finally used the bell.
So I agree with Senator Marsden that we are looking at a potentially very new Senate in the next General Assembly. I am looking forward to being part of a cohort of new senators that are more progressive, that are largely or much more female, identifying as female more so than our current General Assembly, which is made up of only 26% female candidates. We are looking at a more, like I said, more diverse, more progressive, more female General Assembly, and so I do think it will be a very interesting, there will be many new conversations that have to happen, and I too look forward to doing that with a group of new colleagues. And again, prioritizing the relationships between local governments and the state government. I prioritize that during the campaign, making sure that I speak to local candidates in my district, because I think it's important that we work together. And so this is an issue that we would discuss both with our local candidates and our colleagues.
Clarence got his wings. I was told by the great Holly Hazard to ask the people standing in the back to come up front, but you know what? You're the smartest folks in the room. It's hot as hell up here. All right, campaign finance. This is a 2-minute question. It should be a 20-minute question. Virginia is ranked 43rd in campaign finance laws that prevent corruption. Would you vote for legislation that limits all campaign donations, improves disclosure, and restricts the personal use of campaign funds? Why or why not? And a sub-question is, what are your top 3 campaign finance reform issues that you will actively, all quotes, pursue in the coming session? Ms. Drauschak goes first, and it's 2 minutes.
Fantastic. So not only would I support this legislation, I have spent the majority of my career in Virginia fighting for these specific issues. We not only are 43rd in the Swamp Index, ranked against all of the other states, we are one of only 5 states in the country that currently allows unlimited campaign contributions from anyone. That means we have some of the most expensive elections in the country, and it also means that we have millions of corporate dollars that flow into our state legislature every year. We are also one of only 2 states in the country that does not have a personal use ban. That means that you can raise as much money as you want from anyone, and then you can spend it on anything you want. So you could raise $1 million and go buy a boat, and there's nothing in Virginia that's illegal about that. And for 10 years, I've watched this legislation get introduced, and I have watched it die over and over and over again, despite public outcries. And we are always told that it is difficult to implement, but there are 48 other states and the federal government that already do this. So these are not difficult issues to implement. Similarly for campaign, so that is a first priority, campaign contribution limitations. Again, almost every other state in the country does it. The federal government does it. Very easy way to start is to just implement the federal limits in the state. We can start there. I think we should go further, but we can start there. And we need more disclosure. In the state of Virginia, it is very difficult to see where money comes from. We're seeing this right now. Our governor has raised hundreds of thousands of dollars from dark money organizations that we cannot trace back to anything. And there is nothing we can do as citizens and advocates to get answers to those questions. And so not only do I believe we need to limit the amount of money coming into contributions, but we also need to know where it's coming from.
You missed the bell.
I'm getting better.
Well, thank you.
2 minutes. 1 minute, I'm sorry. No, 2 minutes.
That's why I introduced bills this year, as I've already said, on making it illegal to use campaign contributions on personal expenses. And I also voted and co-patroned and voted for a bill to limit campaign contributions. I think if we limit campaign contributions, we have to limit them to everybody equally. What concerns me is that we're going to have to do some serious work to make sure that not only that only the rich can run, because they have the money and they will be restricted in terms of how much money they can spend on their race. I want everybody to be able to run. I want everybody to be able to have this experience. I like public financing of campaigns, and I'd love to see us create an option for people to take public funding and be able to run their campaigns without the help of corporate or personal or any other kinds of contributions. That is something that I think we should look at. That's something I think we can get through. You know, Richmond works pretty well when Democrats are in charge. It doesn't work so well when Republicans are in charge. We got so much done in the 2 years that Eileen Fillercorn was Speaker. I want to get back to that. That's why I'm running. I want to regain the majority in the House of Delegates and regain the governorship, and we can make progress on all of the issues we talked about here tonight.
All right, question 8, it's 1 minute. 1 minute. Virginia, like a majority of states, has a part-time legislature, and therefore legislators with potentially conflicting professional interests, and many Virginians are unable to serve due to low salary. Some people argue that any enterprise with a $160 billion budget should have a governing body working full-time. What are your thoughts on the pros and cons of our system of governing? Senator Marsden goes first. Once again, 1 minute.
The system that we have in place in terms of, we put in 1988 is when we put the salary at, I think, about $18,000. It's remained there ever since. It is a barrier to people being able to run because $18,000, we're starting to get to a point where we'll need the minimum wage increase just to be able to serve in the Virginia legislature. And it does preclude people. I think we can change that. We need to do a study. We need to figure that out, and we need to do it in such a way that it doesn't happen in an election year when everybody is worried about what the voters are going to say. We need an independent group to take a look at this and come to us with some recommendations, like the BRAC Commission did for closing military bases. We need neutral folks coming in and say, this is what will work here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and this is how we ought to fund these races, and also making sure that our expenses are accounted for and not just given in a lump sum.
Cat's out of the bag. Dave and I are not doing this for the money. So, as we mentioned, senators make $18,000 a year, and they also are required to be in Richmond for either 30 or 60 days of each year. Basically, unless you are a self-employed, typically lawyer, a retired person, or independently wealthy, it's nearly impossible to ask your job to give you 2 months off randomly at the beginning of the year. For that reason, I'm a big supporter of General Assembly reform. There are a lot of creative ways to do this. We don't necessarily have to decide between a 30-day legislature or a full-time legislature. We could also have creative solutions where we come in for a month, go home, meet with advocates and our constituents, come back for a month, go back. I actually think it would make the legislating process a lot more effective and would bring in a lot more advocates into the system. So yes, I do believe this needs to be thought through, and I think there are lots of ways to do it, but I think the system as is not working, and we can do better.
All right, question 9, it is 2 minutes. Dominion Power is the largest corporate donor in Virginia, and it is a regulated state monopoly. Dominion has already donated $575,000 to Republican and Democratic candidates this year. Most states and the federal government have bans on corporations contributing to candidates. What protections are in place to alleviate my concerns that Dominion Power unfairly benefits from as a result of these donations? What type of legislation would you introduce to avoid this perceived corruption? 2 minutes. Ms. Drauschak goes first.
I'm not going to alleviate your concerns. I have a major issue with our state-regulated utility giving unlimited campaign contributions to our legislators, because I do believe it creates a conflict of interest. For that reason, I am in favor of legislation that would ban Dominion specifically, but go further than that, from giving to our legislators. In not taking any corporate contributions, I have pledged to not take any money from Dominion. Similarly to what I said before, that does not mean that Dominion is not part of the conversation. They keep the lights on in my house, just like they probably keep the lights on in most of your houses. But they need to be part of the conversation the same way that every other party interested in the future of environmental and energy progress in this state is a part of the conversation. So again, I'm not going to alleviate concerns. I think this is a major issue and one that I think we need to address. I think, unfortunately, it has led to many, many pieces of legislation over the years that favor Dominion over the citizens of the Commonwealth. We have some of the most expensive energy bills in the country, and we have a energy company that continues to build projects and do things and rake in record profits at the expense of its customers. So I think this is something we absolutely need to solve. Again, I think corporate donations overall are a problem, but those from a state-regulated utility that is entirely dependent on the legislation that the legislators they give money to pass is a huge conflict of interest and something we need to end.
Thank you. I'm very comfortable with making it so that regulated utilities like Dominion cannot make donations. I know Senator Peterson has introduced that legislation in the past, and I think that it is, it is time to do that. The Dominion has signed on to the Virginia Clean Economy Act. They're trying to make it happen. They're building 206 windmills out in the ocean that will provide energy for 600,000 homes. We need to make sure that their profits are in line with what should be expected in that, and that they don't have influence over how much that should be. We worked hard to make sure that the SCC, the State Corporation Commission, has the oversight and the final say over what happens with Dominion Power and the rates that they earn, and we did that this year. And we've got a very good start on making sure that as we go forward with clean energy and have the goal of 2045 of being energy neutral, that our power companies can get the investment they need, can get the financing they need to make this happen. We're buying more electric vehicles every day. We need more electricity every day. We're having to deal with the problems of where to site these data centers, which are becoming a real problem to us. We have to figure out just exactly what our electric needs are going to be in the future, and we need good control over our power companies as they move forward. And also, we're going to have to help with siting decisions, because there are a lot of these local small jurisdictions who just don't want solar panels in their jurisdiction, and the state may need to take a bigger role in determining where those are placed to make sure that we have a clean energy future.
No. Oh, yes, car challenge. You got 2 more. Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't need the full 2 minutes. Senator, I'm happy to hear that you support a ban on Dominion contributions, but I do want to point out that Senator Marsden has taken $147,000 from oil and gas companies, and over $100,000 of that has come from Dominion. And so I think that is important context with this answer.
And it's 30 seconds for the challenge card.
Oh, okay.
And you have 2 more. Senator Marsden has 3. You come up. Colin Cranon has a question.
Governor Youngkin has signaled that he wants a 12-week abortion ban in Virginia if they win back control of the Virginia Senate. What is your stance on abortion and a woman's right to choose? We'll begin with Senator Marsden. You have 2 minutes.
I think all of us in this room share the concern that the Dobbs decision made in turning over abortion decisions to states. We're already seeing what's happened, and if Governor Youngkin gets his way, we're going to turn Virginia into Florida, and you know what's going on down there. This is a serious, serious time, and we need people in the legislature who have the experience and the wherewithal to stand up to this governor and to make sure that abortion rights are protected. And I've been recruiting for the state Senate for 8 years. I did it in the House of Delegates for 2 years. And it's going out and finding the candidates who will be reproductive rights champions for women. And in the recent primaries, I sided with a pro-choice woman against a sitting male senator because she was pro-choice and he was pro-life. We can't play games anymore. This is serious business. We have an election coming up this fall. The Republicans are organized, they're fired up, and we have to have the people in place. We have to have the majority in place in the Senate to not only be the brick wall, but to restore and make sure that we get a constitutional amendment to protect a woman's right to choose and to protect her reproductive health care.
I agree. My mother and women of her generation fought for their reproductive freedoms 50 years ago. Unfortunately, with the fall of Roe v. Wade, we are now fighting for those reproductive freedoms all over again. With the lack of guarantees at the federal level, this has now become a state issue, and that is why we need to do everything we can to enshrine these rights in our state constitution. When we have a Democratic majority, we can do that in the next 2 years with a Republican governor, because it only has to go through the General Assembly for 2 years with a majority. So this is something that as a Senate and as a hopefully Democratic House, we can actually make moves on in the next 2 years. We had the opportunity in the past, we did not do it. I think we cannot take this for granted, and again, must do everything we can to guarantee these rights at the state level and protect the freedoms that we had 50 years ago and are now under threat.
Yep, pass it back to you.
All right, this is question 11. It is 1 minute, timekeepers, 1 minute. And Ms. Drauschak, you go first. Virginia is one of 3 states with lifetime disenfranchisement of former felons written in the Constitution. Very sad. In 2016, Governor Terry McAuliffe instituted automatic restoration of rights upon release from prison. That's a big deal. Governor Northam continued the same practice, and more than 200,000 returning citizens had their rights restored. Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin has ended the decade-long practice and is creating his own version of who could and should be allowed to vote. What is your position on the process for allowing felons to vote? 1 minute, Ms. Drauschak.
So Republicans have unfortunately decided that if they can't fairly win elections, they will simply rig the elections or keep people from voting. And that is what we have recently seen with the governor's actions to disenfranchise people who have every right to vote. I think this is extremely unfortunate. I think we as a party need to do everything we can to stand up and get back this right. These people have served their time. They have served their sentences, and it is not appropriate for us to be keeping the right to vote and to participate in our democracy from them, or even make it especially difficult as we currently are under this governor's new policy. So I would like to see this action reversed, and I think we need to do everything we can to get as many people as possible involved in the process rather than shutting people out.
As someone who's been in juvenile corrections for a lifetime and does consulting in the adult correctional world, I can't tell you how many inmates and young people who can tell you how much a pardon, how much restoring their voting rights means to them. It's a personal thing for people. It's the dignity of a human being to be part of the community that they've been returned to. And once you've done your time, I don't care if you owe fines. I don't care if you still have other restrictions. You should be able to vote. That's the single most important thing that establishes this democracy. You know, we're a no parole state, and I worked for 6 years so that young people, 14, 15 years old, who get sentenced to life without parole, have an opportunity at a parole after 20 years of incarceration. That sounds like a long time. These kids have done some terrible things. But it's the only exemption to parole. It took me 6 years to get it, and now a 14-year-old can get out sometime in their 30s and live a life.
All right, question 12. It is 1 minute, timekeepers. Public education is in the crosshairs for Republican politicians. The state government plays a huge role in local education by funding and in dictating much of the policy, including standardized testing. Although the state promises funding, it comes up with strings attached, such as more and more SOLs. And also that localities, including Fairfax County, struggle to get the money promised because they must come up with matching funds. For example, the recent raise for teachers the legislature passed didn't translate into retention bonuses for Fairfax teachers because the local government couldn't come up with the matching funds. What should the legislature do to ensure that Virginia is adequately funding public education and reducing the amount of unnecessary testing? It's 1 minute, and Senator Marsden goes first.
Thank you, Gene. School funding, it's a very, very serious problem. We fell so far behind after the 2008 recession. I think we're still $1,000 behind the national average. We can't depend on localities in some of these jurisdictions to be able to make up the difference. In other words, to come up with half of the raise that we authorize at the state level. The state has got to step up with a new way of looking at school funding so that these inequities aren't passed on. Here in Mason District, Fairfax County gets a certain amount of money for education, but does the money get to the centers and the pockets of poverty and difficulty that we have here in Mason District, that we have in Franconia, that we have in the Mount Vernon District? We need to take an entirely new look at the way we fund our schools, what the state's responsibility is, what the locality's responsibility is, and where we get money to the kids who need it.
Public funding of education, or funding of public education, has been a campaign talking point for every election I've watched in Virginia. But time and time again, just like campaign finance reform, this is an issue I see the General Assembly take up and not deal with. And that is not appropriate in a state where we have had a budget surplus for the last 2 years. We have new streams of income, especially with the legalization of marijuana, the legalization of gambling. We have lots of new tax streams that can be used on these and other issues. We should be setting the gold standard in Virginia. It is not appropriate for us to have crumbling schools, to be paying our teachers below the national average, to be missing the additional staff the schools need. And so I think this is an issue that should be of utmost priority for the General Assembly and needs to be something we actually take action on in the General Assembly session.
Okay. These are questions from the audience. And I'm reading a 3x5 card, and whoever wrote this, your handwriting looks like chicken with ink eyes. I think I can read it. You probably know who it is.
Yeah.
I love this question. Some candidates can't answer. Why do you want this job? And if you get elected, what do you expect to accomplish? What are your priorities? And this is a 1 minute timekeeper. And it should be 20. So Drauschak goes first. 1 minute.
Why do I want this job? Because I want to solve problems. I've worked on these issues for years as an advocate, and these are things that will affect me and my family. And at the end of the day, these are problems that we can solve as with my colleagues and as a party, and I am excited to get in there and do the work. My priorities are to guarantee that we as legislators and we as a legislature represent and take care of the people of our district. I think we have gone far too long protecting special interests and corporate interests, and I think there are many things like paid family medical leave, raising the minimum wage, funding our schools, seeing more progress on the environment that we have not made enough bold action on. And so my priority is to get in there, make bold moves, and take care of the people of my district, but the citizens of the Commonwealth altogether.
Heidi and I probably share many of the same, concerns for all the things she just talked about. But Virginia is divided. It is divided between our rural communities and our urban suburban communities. We have got to restore economic parity in this Commonwealth. The people of South Side of Southwest Virginia used to be the leaders in terms of our economy. They used to be the driving force behind it, and they lost it all. We need to restore that. I'm working right now with the administration on a project to bring remote workers into a part of Southwest Virginia that's just a beautiful, beautiful community with many assets, with a nearby airport. And let's bring some young families who can work remotely down there. Let's incentivize them to build the economy of Southwest Virginia up from the bottom, rather than trying to find companies to come in when the workforce may not exist to do that. But there is just so much work to be done. I'm so excited about having a chance to do it. It takes a lot of work, and I'm willing to do it, and I want to do it. Thank you.
Okay. All right, this is question 14. It is 1 minute timekeeper. Keepers. Senator Marsden goes first. Here's the question. How do you plan to balance economic growth in Northern Virginia with quality of life, pedestrian safety, overcrowded schools, traffic, bicycle safety, blah, blah, blah? That's the question.
Oh, I got a bill for that.
1 minute.
One of the things I think Annandale is, which is the center of Mason District, is really a hole in the donut in terms of transportation. We need circulator buses like they have in Fairfax City for like the Q bus, to be able to get people to the VRE, to be able to get people to Metro, to be able to improve their ability to transit within the district and outside the district. It is critical that we do that. Annandale, Springfield, which are both parts of this district, are very dangerous to walk in. We need to find solutions so that people can make these walkable communities, so that you can bike. I'm working right now on a trail on Georgetown Pike to try to connect the next project on the Beltway with the Great Falls Park. There's just so much work to be done to improve the life of people here in Northern Virginia, and I'm anxious to get started. Every year I'm anxious to get started.
I agree with Senator Marsden that there are so many creative ways we can go about this. And so I think when, again, we ask this question of how do we balance the economic interests with all these wonderful things like having a more multimodal community that is friendly to pedestrians and bicyclists and buses, it doesn't have to be an either or. We see this with transportation, where we can come up with really creative solutions that we're already starting to see in the district. We see this with housing. Again, there are wonderful ways to build multifamily homes and change zoning and do creative things that will bring more income into the district and solve a lot of the problems. And so I think I've already spoken to a lot of the local candidates, a lot of the supervisor candidates, and the like have a lot of really exciting ideas on how to address these issues. And I think we just need people who are invested in the community and ready to be really creative with solutions, because I don't think we need to sacrifice one or the other. We just need to build a more vibrant community.
Okay, question 15 is a little bit of an overlap, but I kind of like it. This is a 1 minute question, timekeepers. Mrs. Drauschak goes first. Here it is. Some argue that paid family leave and a higher minimum wage could hurt local businesses. Do you support increases in both leave and wages? If so, how would you respond to the idea that these issues are anti-business and anti-growth? You go first, 1 minute.
Thank you. So as I've answered before, I don't think it's either or. My husband and I run a small business that consults with other businesses to help them with their productivity. And what we have found time and time again is that you do not have to sacrifice these things to see more profits and to see more productivity. The companies that take care of their workers actually see increases in these profits and productivity. And you have a much happier, healthier workforce, which as a community and as a society means we actually pay less on the back end. So again, I absolutely support a minimum wage increase because nobody should have to live on $24,000 a year. That's a little more than what we'd be making in 30 days at the General Assembly, but that's for an entire year. And I do support paid family medical leave and similar activities to take care of their workers, not because I think it's anti-business, but because I think it builds stronger, more sustainable businesses with healthier and happier workers.
For 3 years, I was the voice of the minimum wage increase in the Virginia State Senate. Every year I introduced a bill. Every year we'd get it out of the Senate when the Senate was Democratic, and then lose it in the House. And every year the Republicans were in the Senate, it didn't get out of the Senate. But we're now on the path to $15, and then what we need to do is index it for inflation to make sure that we keep up with it. You can never, ever, ever go wrong with improving people's lives, with the ability to have paid family leave, to have sick leave, to have annual leave. All this equals out between businesses at the end of the day. It is not an anti-business thing at all. You can create an environment that works for everybody to make sure that businesses are still able to make money, to support their family, to support the families and the workers, but at the same time to create a work environment and a living environment for people that makes Virginia a place that everybody wants to come to. And that's my hope.
I think now Colleen does the rapid fire. So I just want to make sure, okay, Senator Marsden goes first. We'll alternate. These are rapid fire questions. You can't use a challenge card. You get 10 to 20 seconds, timekeeper. 10 to 20 seconds. That's going to be tough. I'll do the bell. Clarence will be happy.
Thank you.
We'll alternate.
Just to reiterate, these are rapid fire questions, so short and brief. So beginning with number 1. Which Senate committee would you most like to be on and why?
Which one?
I've been in the Senate for 12 years or 14 years, and I am on the committees I've always dreamed about. I chair transportation. I'm on finance. I chair economic development and natural resources. I'm on agriculture and natural resources. I'm able to do climate work there, and I also deal with it on the Senate Finance Committee. I'm also on the Rules Committee, and that's my bell.
Clarence.
I would love to be part of the subcommittee that oversees campaign finance reform. I would also like to be on the Energy Committee so that we can make more progress on the environment and energy policy here in Virginia.
Do you support LGBTQ+ rights?
Absolutely. And what is being done to transgender children in this Commonwealth by this governor, by this administration, is horrendous. And we need to get our values back. We need to get our common sense and our sanity back and help these kids transition to the life that they were born into.
I concur. I am an ally. I think it is heart-wrenching to hear some of the stories that children and families are being put through here in the Commonwealth, especially right now. And I think we need to do everything as a party and as legislators and just as citizens to support this community.
Are you or have you ever been a registered lobbyist for any particular industry or special interest group?
The closest I ever came to that was when I was president of the Virginia Juvenile Justice Association and president at a different time of the Juvenile Detention Association, where I would take bills that were important to our members in front of the legislature and find a patron for them to take it before the appropriate committee.
I'll stick to 1 second. No.
Short and sweet. Do you oppose public spending for charter schools?
No.
Mind repeating the question?
Do you oppose public spending for charter schools?
No public funding for charter schools.
Yes, I agree with the Senator. I oppose the public funding for charter schools.
These 4 questions, we have one last question from the audience. And then so these 4 questions we just asked were selected by the Forum Committee. This last rapid fire question that I'll be asking was asked by the audience. Do you support changing Virginia Department of Transportation maintenance allocation to be by lane miles traveled?
Could you repeat the question?
This was asked by the audience. Do you support changing Virginia Department of Transportation maintenance allocation to be by quote-unquote lane miles traveled?
We switched from set allocations to transportation districts years ago, and we're now evaluating the roads, and we're doing it based on road conditions, and that's I think the right way to go. Evaluate the road, and the ones that need the repair the most should get the attention.
I'll be honest, this is an issue I would definitely like to educate myself on more, and would have an answer once I do a little more research.
Pass it back.
All right, this is for a special person, Steve Kell. Who is going to Network Nova's Women's Summit? That's an easy
What's the
answer.
question?
I'm going, I'm a sponsor.
There you go. Okay, I think that was easy. This is me. All right, I love books. What book or books have you read in the last 3 years that really made an impression on you? Last 3 years. Could be anything. Historical, fiction, whatever. Heidi, go first.
And this is 10 seconds?
I'll give you 30.
So I'm currently reading a book called The Bill of Obligations. It is a very interesting book that basically says that we have the Bill of Rights, but as citizens, we also need to have a Bill of Obligations. And of course, it is a metaphorical bill, not an actual written document, but speaks to the idea that as citizens and as Americans, our democracy is strongest when we not only have rights, but when we also take responsibility for our role as citizens. And so I found it very intriguing, very interesting, and I appreciate all of you because you are obviously taking that very seriously.
A book I've almost finished, Homo Deus. It deals with the challenges that we face with artificial intelligence, with technology replacing workers, with the efficiencies that are going to be created, and how we are going to deal with creating lives for people when work becomes so efficient, then there may not be jobs enough for people. It's a serious problem. We're already seeing AI, create some real disturbances in our society and some real confusion.
I can't resist. I'm reading a book, it's about 90 pages. It's short, but it's profound. It's by Oscar Wilde, who went to prison because he was gay. It's called De Profundis, and I encourage you to read it. It was written about 1895. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. Okay. The Washington Commanders want to find a new stadium. This is out in left field, mixing metaphors. Do you care? Do you need more time to research this issue? What efforts, if any, will you do to bring a stadium in Northern Virginia, if you think that's appropriate? That's my question.
It's pretty much been proven that it's a bad idea. It just doesn't work. And of course, it's a local decision. It's a local zoning decision as to whether some locality wants to do it. But it's going to impact transportation, it's going to impact infrastructure, and it's going to bleed over into the state. So we need to take a pretty firm position on this. And I have met Mr. Snyder. He is not persuasive. And hopefully he's no longer here. But at this point in time, I think it belongs at RFK in the District of Columbia. It's the Washington Commanders, not the Virginia Commanders. That's the place for it.
So I agree. I think this is a decision that has to be made at the local level. I believe as a legislator and as a representative, we have to represent the people of our district, and so I think it would be important, through some of the technologies that I mentioned earlier, to figure out what the people of the new 35th district think about this issue. I think that said, no taxpayer money should go to building the stadium, and I think we, wherever it ends up, needs to prioritize unionized workers, small businesses, supporting the community that it's in, but I think ultimately this is a decision that needs to be made at the local level by the people who will be affected by the stadium.
I have great news. It's 8:20, and we're going to closings. So, 3 minutes for closing. Senator Marsden first, Heidi second. 3 minutes each, timers.
Thank you so much, Network Nova, Mason Dems, for having this, Gene for hosting us here and being our moderator. My experience in this community and the depth of my involvement in this community started when I got out of college. I was on the court-appointed Special Advocates Board for abused children. I was on the Literacy Council Advisory Board. I was on the Enterprise School Board. When I took them, we bought a house and I organized volunteer labor and got donations of supplies and equipment to create a school for troubled young people. I've coached 4 different sports here in the Northern Virginia area, including the Annandale, North Springfield, Little League. When I ran our juvenile detention center, I got 3 important things accomplished. I started an education program that won the National Association of Counties Award because we were the first program to get the kids' homework from their schools and bring it to the detention center. It took volunteers, parents, staff to do that, and we did it before there were computers. I started a young women's health clinic because I found out in some of the research that 70% of these young women had an issue that would affect their reproductive health. I had 2 ectopic pregnancies within a 6-week period of time. And so I got with our OBGYN who worked for Fairfax County, and they came in and we created the clinic. We tested every 2 weeks. We tested all the young ladies. We treated them, and it was a massive improvement to their health. I also started within our detention home here the first juvenile detention home, locally operated, secure, mental health and substance abuse treatment program in the state of Virginia. When I went to the Department of Juvenile Justice, I started using risk instruments, and the cumulative effect over time has meant that we no longer have 8 facilities with 1,500 kids. We have 1 facility left with 200 kids. Our juvenile detention center population, there's 24 of these homes. They have 1,445 beds. We have 351 kids in them. I'm working right now to consolidate those so we can free up $30 million for youth mental health. It's in the budget right now. I hope it survives the budget process. But these are the things I've been able to do because of the deep commitment I have to this community, the years of experience I have, and the desire it is to make Fairfax County continuing to be the greatest place to live, and that Virginia is all part of what makes America great. And we were the leaders when we were first established back in 1607, and I want us to be the leaders in every category again.
So thank you again all for coming out on a Tuesday night. As a resident of Virginia, as a very new mom, and as an advocate for almost the last decade, I have fought for many of these issues, and I have heard time and time again that this is not the year. This is not the time. It is an election year. We can't move that fast. And I'm here today, and I'm running in this race to challenge that notion. There is no reason why, as a Commonwealth and as a state legislature, that we can't take bold action and set a gold standard here in the Commonwealth. We should be the shining example for other states rather than lagging behind national averages. You've heard today about a bunch of different issues. I will just talk about a few. Paid family medical leave, again, is a perfect example of how we not only prioritize our businesses, but how we prioritize our workers. Again, as somebody who has just come off of 3 weeks with a newborn, I believe that women and men should be able to spend 3 months with their newborn or with a sick loved one without having to jeopardize their job. We also, I believe unequivocally, that we need to repeal our right to work laws. And again, this is not a decision between the business community and the workers within them. I think we can do justice by both, but we need to do it boldly. That is the same for a minimum wage, because no one should have to live on $12 an hour. That is the same for Roe v. Wade. We need to codify into our state constitution so that women in Virginia don't ever have to worry about their reproductive freedoms being taken away. And that is the case on the environment, because we can't have solutions in 2050 when my son is 30. We need solutions in 2030. And the way that we go about this is by prioritizing, as I've said over and over again, the people of our district. I am the only candidate in this race not taking corporate contributions, and I will prioritize the people of the new 35th district when making these decisions and when legislating on these issues. And fortunately, I am not the only candidate this election cycle doing that. I am one of many candidates now no longer taking corporate contributions, which is a wonderful change that I've seen over the last couple of years. And I hope to be part of a slate of legislators that is more diverse, that is more progressive, that is more female, and that is ready to be bold. Because when we want action and when we want to see a new Virginia and a new and better Commonwealth, I can guarantee you nobody's going to get the job done better than a bunch of angry moms.
You have honored me. This is a blast. We've been brought in some It's a Wonderful Life memorabilia. Thank you so much. This was an incredible debate. I now turn it over to the great Holly Hazard.
Thank you, Dean. I'd say one disappointment for me was that there were no questions on animal welfare in the debate, but as I was part of the committee, I couldn't bias it, but I have talked to both candidates about this, and they're both great on that issue. But now is the time for applause. First, I want to recognize Mason Dems and Rachel Rifkin, and also Network Nova and Sarah Calhoun for hosting the event. I did this for the event with the district supervisors last week, and it's a harder job than you think it is. It's just very nerve-wracking, and I do appreciate you both stepping up and helping us. And also Colleen Crana. Colleen is here tonight because we are committed to lifting up the young Democrats in our community and in giving them leadership positions so that they can go on, because they are going to be the ones to carry the torch of democracy forward, and we need to encourage all of them. And also, I would like to recognize Eddie, you need to look at me now because I'm talking about you, the Condes, because they brought their kids to the debate, and I thought the kids have been really great, and I'm sure they didn't get it all, but they got a lot of it, and I think it's wonderful that folks are bringing their children up to this. So thank you so much. Thank you all for coming out on this campaign.
All the thanks go out to all of you for being here, and I thank you for coming, but I have to thank Holly Hazard for this effort.
Thank you. Good night all.